Good morning to all. I welcome you all to this class. I'm Miss Vandana Gupta, Assistant Professor of Mathematics. In my last lecture, we studied standard deviation, one of the measures of dispersion. We are in the unit summarization measures. In that measures of dispersion, that is what we are currently studying. In that, we have seen that there are four measures of dispersion: range, quartile deviation, mean deviation, and standard deviation. So these three we had already completed, and fourth one we started yesterday. And standard deviation, some few problems also we have done. Today we are going to see some more problems based on coefficient of variation. So let me quickly revise what we did in the last class. We defined what is standard deviation. So standard deviation is nothing but positive square root of the variance. What is variance? Variance is defined as the arithmetic mean of the squares of the deviation of the values from the arithmetic mean. And it is denoted by sigma square. So in other words, if you have to calculate the variance, what you do? You take the difference of each value from the mean, take the square of those differences, and take the arithmetic mean of those squares. That is called the variance. And when you take the square root of variance, you get standard deviation. See here, for raw data, how do you calculate standard deviation? See, we have taken the average of the squares of the values from the mean, x minus x bar. X bar is the mean. X minus x bar square, and we are taking the square of these, we are taking the average of these squares, so summation of these values divided by total values, and when you take the square root of that, that gives you standard deviation. If you simplify this x minus x bar square, expand this and simplify this, the same formula after simplification becomes this. So standard deviation equal to sigma is just a notation. So the same formula becomes standard deviation given by sigma equal to square root of summation of x square upon n. This square root is up to here, okay, minus x bar square, where x bar is the mean. When you are having, this is for raw data, when you are having group data, that means if you are given the frequency table, in that case, these square of the differences are repeated f number of times. So you will multiply here by f. And capital N, as you know, it is sum of the frequencies. So capital N will be replaced by summation f. Similarly, in this formula also, x square you will multiply by f, and capital N will be replaced by summation of f. See, this is how we have written here. For group data of discrete type, standard deviation is given by square root of, see, multiply by f, f into summation of x minus x bar square divided by summation of f. And for the second formula, again, we multiply x square by f, and capital N is summation of f. What is x bar? For the mean, x bar is the mean. Mean for the group data is given by summation of fx divided by summation f. You already know that. And if you are having a continuous type of data, meaning if the class intervals are given, in that case, what is your x? It represents the class mark. Then we have defined what is coefficient of variation. Coefficient of variation is standard deviation divided by mean into 100. It is the relative measure of the standard deviation, and it is denoted by CV, and it is expressed as a percentage. If you remember, we have also defined the mean deviation, coefficient of mean deviation. If you remember, what was coefficient of mean deviation? It was mean deviation divided by mean. Similarly, coefficient of standard deviation, which we call it as coefficient of variation, it is standard deviation divided by mean. In place of mean deviation, you have a standard deviation, and it is expressed as a percentage, so we multiply by 100. Now, you know what is our standard notation for standard deviation? It is sigma, and mean x bar. So in symbolically, how we can write CV is equal to sigma divided by x bar into 100. Okay, so this is the formula to calculate CV. Then we have solved these problems yesterday. For raw data, we have calculated standard deviation and coefficient of variation. Then for group data of discrete type, we have calculated standard deviation and coefficient of variation. And then for group data of continuous type, that means class intervals are given. The only difference is when class intervals are given, you have to find out another column X, which will be the class mark. Okay, so this much we have done. Today we will see how to use coefficient of variation to compare the consistency of two groups. Then these tutorial problems I had given you, tutorial and homework problems. So some of them have solved it. Those who have not solved, they can start solving now. So today's topic is regarding the coefficient of variation. As I have already given you, that coefficient of variation is given by standard deviation divided by mean into 100. In notation, it can be written as standard deviation notation is sigma, mean notation is x bar. So sigma upon x bar into 100. Now the coefficient of variation is used to compare variability of two or more distributions. That means if you are given two groups of data and you have to compare which group has got more variation in the data, then what we do, we calculate coefficient of variation for both the groups. The distribution or the group or the data with less coefficient of variation will have less variation and it will be more consistent. What do you understand by that? अगर कोएफिशिएंट ऑफ वेरिएशन का वैल्यू कम है तो उस डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन में कम वेरिएशन है. कम वेरिएशन मतलब वैल्यूज एक दूसरे के क्लोजर है. वेरिएशन कम है मतलब डिफरेंस कम है वैल्यूज में. So such a group is more consistent. Remember like this: less variation, more consistency. Okay. On the other hand, the distribution with more coefficient of variation, it has more variation and so it is said to be less consistent. यानी जिस ग्रुप का CV is more, उसमें वेरिएशन भी more होगा और अगर वेरिएशन ज्यादा होगा तो कंसिस्टेंसी विल बी लेस. Okay, so today we are going to solve problems based on that. Okay, so let us see the first problem. What is the first question? The following data gives the means and standard deviations of two groups of workers. Find coefficient of variation for both the groups and decide which group is more consistent. Look at here. Here you are given two groups of workers. First group, group 1, second group, group 2, and this much information is given to you. What is the mean for the first group? It is given as 450. What is the mean for the second group? It is 500. Standard deviation of the first group is rupees 10. It may be the data is regarding the income or wages of these workers. So it is given in rupees. And group 2 standard deviation is rupees 12. And you are also given that group 1 contains 400 people, group 2 contains 600 people. Okay, we have to find out of these two groups, which group is more consistent. So what will we do? We will first find out coefficient of variation for both the groups. Okay, so see how I have solved this problem. For group 1, first we will calculate for group 1. For group 1, find out what is CV. What is the formula to calculate CV? Standard deviation divided by mean into 100. What is standard deviation for group 1? Look at group 1. Standard deviation for group 1 is 10. So standard deviation in place of this, I have kept 10. Mean क्या है? For first group, mean is 450. So mean की जगह पर 450. Now 10 upon 450 into 100. Do it by calculator. The answer is 2.22. Okay. For group 2, again, you will calculate CV. How? Standard deviation for group 2 is 12 and mean is 500. So 12 divided by 500 into 100. When you calculate, you will get 2.4. So we have calculated CV or coefficient of variation for both the groups. For first group, the value is 2.22. For second group, the value is 2.4. Now we have to find out which group is more consistent. Look at my previous note. कहाँ पर ज्यादा consistency होती है? जहाँ पर less value होता है coefficient of variation का. So look at where you are having less value. Which is less, 2.22 or 2.4? 2.22, right? So as coefficient of variation for group 1 is less than that of group 2. Therefore, see, coefficient of variation for group 1 is less than that of group 2. Therefore, group 1 is more consistent. So जिसका CV कम होगा, that group will be more consistent. Okay. So to find out which group is more consistent, you have to find out CV for both the group. Compare. जिसका CV कम है, that group is more consistent. Okay. Next problem. Now, see, in the previous problem, I was given the value in the table form. Here, I am not given in the table form. If you want, you can prepare the table. Okay. Here, I am given the data. Data is just written like that, not in the tabular form, like the previous problem. The mean and standard deviation of a group of boys are 25.5 and 10.87 respectively. What you understand? There is a group of boys and the mean of the group of boys is 25.5 and standard deviation is 10.87. Okay. For another group of girls, there is one more group which contains girls. The mean and standard deviations are 37.5 and 4.89 respectively. That means I am given the information about mean and standard deviation of these two groups. First group is group of boys. The second group is group of girls. What do you have to find out? Find which group has more variation. In this question, what is asked to you? Which group has got more variation? Previous question mein, what was asked? Which group is more consistent? Here, which group has more variation? Has got more variation. So, which group has got more variation? Jiska CV ज़्यादा होगा. Okay. So again, we are going to calculate CV for both the groups. So if you want, you can write down this data in the table form. So you can prepare a table. It is up to you. How you are comfortable. If you are comfortable in preparing the table, you can prepare the table, or you may. So I can prepare the table here. Given. What I will do, I'll make two groups here. One is the group of boys. The other one is the group of girls. Okay. What information I'm having? I have information regarding the mean and information regarding the standard deviation. Okay. Look at here. The mean and standard deviation of group of boys. So mean is 25.5. The mean of boys. So I will write here 25.5. And standard deviation is 10.87. So I have written here 10.87. Okay. For another group of girls, the mean and standard deviation are 37.5 and 4. So mean is 37.5. Mean of girls is 37.5. And for for standard deviation for girls, 4.89. So even though it was not given in the table form, if you feel you are comfortable in preparing the table, you can prepare the table like this. Okay, as it was given here. Okay. Now what will I do? I will calculate CV for both the groups. What is for let us first calculate for group of boys. CV is what? Standard deviation divided by mean into 100. Okay, so standard deviation for boys group is 10.87. So standard deviation is 10.87. Mean is 25.5. So 10.87 divided by 25.5 into 100 gives me 42.6. You can check the calculation by the calculator later on. Okay. Now you only listen and try to understand. Now for group of girls, find out CV. What is the standard deviation for group of girls? 4.89. So 4.89 divided by mean, that is 37.5 into 100. After simplification, you get 13.04. So we have calculated coefficient of variation for group of boys as well as for group of girls. What you have to find out? Find which group has more variation. Which group will have more variation? Where CV is more. So I'll compare these two CVs. Where CV is more? In the first group of boys. So see how I have written. As CV for group of boys is more, than that of group of girls. So group of boys has more variation. More CV, more variation, less consistency. This is how you have to remember. Okay. So CV of boys group is more than CV of girls group. And so boys group is more consistent. I'm sorry. Boys group has got more variation. But if the same question is asked like this, which group is more consistent? Then you will see where CV is less. CV is less for girls group. So that is more consistent. Okay. I hope you have understood. So we have seen in the first problem, which group is more consistent was asked. So we have seen the group having less value of CV. In the second problem, which group has got more variation? It was asked. So the group having more value for CV. That was boys group. Look at the third problem. What is given to you in the third problem? The coefficient of variation for a group was 30.91 and mean was 13.63. Find the standard deviation of the group. Look at, in this problem, you are given coefficient of variation, whereas in the last two problem, coefficient of variation you have calculated. See here, CV was calculated, but here CV is already given. What is given to you here? Coefficient of variation is given to you as 30.91. So CV is 30.91. Whenever a problem is given, try to read it, understand, and write down what is given to you and what is asked to you. So here CV is given as 30.91 and mean is 13.63. So mean that we denote by x bar, that is 13.63. What is asked to you? Find the standard deviation of the group. So we have to find what? Standard deviation. What is the symbol for standard deviation? Sigma. So that means in this problem, what you have to find out? You have to find out sigma. So I put a question mark here. Okay. Now see, what is my formula for CV? CV is sigma, that is standard deviation divided by x bar into 100. In this formula, there are three unknowns. One is CV, one is sigma, and one is x bar. If you know any two of them, you should be able to find out the third. So in the previous two problem, I was given sigma and x bar. So I put the value and I got CV. In this problem, I am given CV. What is my CV? 30.91. So in place of CV, I'll put 30.91. Sigma, I have to calculate. So let us put sigma as it is because I have to find out the value of that. And what is x bar? It is 13.60. So just put the values, whatever values are given to you. Okay. Now what does this gives me? See, I got this. CV is 30.91 equal to sigma divided by 13.60 multiplied by 100. So I can write here 100 because 100 is in the numerator. Now I have to simplify this and find the value of sigma. Okay, how will you do that? See here, there is no denominator, means it is 1. Okay, if you remember in bridge course, we have solved this. How to solve the such type of equation and find the value of unknown. Okay, so in such type of question, you will do cross multiplication. You will multiply this by this and this by this. So this is, I have put an arrow here. Cross multiply, this will multiply by this and sigma 100 will multiply by 1. So 1 into sigma 100 will give you, say 100 sigma will give you 100 sigma and 30.91 into 13.60. See, I have put an arrow here. 30.91 into 13.60. Now I have to find the value of sigma. So what will I do with this 100? This 100 will be shifted to the other side. When you shift this 100 to the other side, it will divide because there is, which symbol is here between 100 and sigma? It is no symbol, means multiplication. Okay. So 100 has to go to the other side. So it will divide. So I will get this multiplied by 1 will give me 100 sigma and 30.91 multiplied by 13.63. Now I have to find the value of sigma. So what I will do, I have to shift this 100 to the other side. So 100 and sigma, in between there is a multiplication. So when I shift to the other side, it will divide. 30.91 into 13.60 divided by 100. This is what I have written here. When you simplify this by using the calculator only, you have to do the answer. What you will get is 4.2. So sigma is equal to 4.2. Okay. So the standard deviation of the group is 4.2. So I have taken three types of problem. In the first problem, you were asked to find which group is more consistent. In the second problem, which group has got more variation. And in the third problem, you were given CV and you were asked to find out sigma. Okay. So just put the values in the formula. Which the value which is not given, keep it as it is, cross multiply and solve for sigma. Okay. Now see, next what we are going to see is the combined standard deviation. See, if you remember, we have done combined mean. What is the meaning of combined mean? If you have two groups and if you know the mean of two groups, suppose you have got two groups, one is group of boys, the other one is group of girls, and you know the average marks of boys group and average marks of girls group, and you also know how many boys are there and how many girls are there. And if you combine those two groups, then what is the average of the combined group? That is called the combined mean. And this we have already done. Okay. Similarly, we can also find out combined standard deviation. That means if you know the standard deviation of two groups, then you can find out the standard deviation of the combined group. See how it is given. Combined standard deviation. If there are two groups containing N1 and N2 observation, that means first group contains N1 number of values, second group contains N2 number of values, and the mean of the first group is X1 bar, mean of the second group is X2 bar, and standard deviation of the first group is sigma 1, standard deviation of the second group is sigma 2. Then the standard deviation sigma of the combined group is, which will contain N1 plus N2, of course, is given by this formula. What is the formula? Sigma, that is the combined standard deviation, is equal to square root of N1 into, in a bracket, sigma 1 square plus D1 square plus N2 into sigma 2 square plus D2 square divided by N1 plus N2. Now, what is the meaning of N1? It is the number of members in the first group. What is N2? Number of members in the second group. What is sigma 1? Standard deviation of the first group. Sigma 2, standard deviation of the second group. What is this D1 and D2? Look at here. What is D1? D1 is X1 bar minus X bar. What is X1 bar? It is the mean of the first group. And what is X bar? It is the combined. So D1, D for difference. D1 means we are taking the difference of the mean of the first group from the combined. What is D2? D for difference. 2 means for the second group. So D2 is difference of the mean of the second group from the combined. Okay, so once you get D1 and D2, just find out, put in the formula all the values, you will get the combined standard deviation. Formula is slightly, can't say complicated, but slightly bigger. Okay, and the calculations are more here. Okay, so if you are having two groups, I'll write down here, group 1 and group 2. And what you know what is the mean of the first group. Wait a minute. Suppose you have got two groups, group number 1 and group number 2. Okay? You know number. Number means what? How many members are there in the first group? So N for number. So for first group, I will put a symbol N1. N means number, 1 means for the first group. N for number, 2 means I'm talking about the second group. So N2 means number of members in the second group. Mean. Mean, how we denote? X bar. If I'm talking about the first group, I'll put a suffix X1. X1 bar. For second group, X2 bar. Then standard deviation. What is the notation for standard deviation? It is sigma. If I'm talking about the standard deviation of the first group, sigma 1. For the second group, sigma 2. So this is the way you should remember. Okay. So if you have two groups, if you know the members in the two groups, number of members, if you know the mean of the two groups, and if you also know the standard deviation of the two groups, then you can always find out the combined mean and combined standard deviation of both the groups. So combined mean we have already done. Okay, this is the formula to calculate the combined mean. But to calculate combined standard deviation, also you need this, because D1 and D2 is the difference of the mean of the first group and second group from the combined mean. So combined standard deviation निकालना है तो combined standard mean भी निकालना ही पड़ेगा. Okay. So I have taken one problem to find out the combined standard deviation. Look at this problem. The following are some particulars of the distribution of weights of boys and girls in a class. Find the standard deviation of the combined group. See. Here you are given two groups, boys group and girls group. Number is given, boys are 100 in number, girls are 50 in number. Mean weight of, in weight is there, so it is expressed in kilograms. So mean weight of boys is 60 and mean weight of girls is 45. Standard deviation of weight of boys is 3 and standard deviation of weight of girls is 2. Okay, so I have written here what is given to me. Here what is N1, N for number, for first group, matlab boys group. N1 is 100, N2 is 50. 60 is what? It is mean. So X1 bar is 60. And what is this? It is a mean. So X, it is for the second group, girls. So it is X2 bar. If you want, you can write like this. Boys group, you can call it as the first group. This you can call it as the second group. Okay. And 3 is what? It is standard deviation. So 3 is nothing but it is sigma 1. This is sigma 1. What is 2? It is sigma 2. What is this? It is X1 bar. What is this? It is X2 bar. What is 100? It is N1. What is 50? It is N2. So like this, either you can write in table or I have written here. Okay, now I have to find out the standard deviation of the combined group. So सबसे पहले मुझे combined mean निकालना होगा. What is the combined mean? It is given by N1 into X1 bar plus N2 into X2 bar divided by N1 plus N2. Put the values. N1 is 100, X1 bar is 60 plus N2 is 50, X2 bar is 40, 45 divided by 100 plus 50. You simplify this, you will get 100 into 60, 6,000 plus 50 into 45, 2250 divided by 150. You will get 8250 divided by 150. Do all the calculation by calculator. You are allowed to use calculator in exam. So X bar is 55. So you got combined mean as 55. Okay. Once you have got combined mean as 55, we will find out D1 and D2. So what is D1? It is the difference of the mean of the first group from the combined mean. So X1 bar minus X bar. What is X1 bar? X1 bar was 60. So 60 minus 55 will give you 5. And D2 matlab second group ka arithmetic mean ka difference from the combined mean. 45 minus 55 will give you minus 10. So D1 is 5, D2 is minus 10. We want in the formula D1 square. Square, you know, 5 ka square is 25. 5 into 5. D2 square, D2 is minus 10. Minus 10 square means minus 10 into minus 10. Minus into minus will give you plus. So minus 10 square is minus 10 into minus 10. Minus into minus will be plus. So it will be 10 into 10. So it will get 100. Okay. Now put your, write down your formula for combined standard deviation. Sigma, it is given by square root of N1 into sigma 1 square plus D1 square plus N2 into sigma 2 square plus D2 square divided by N1 plus N2. Put the values. N1 is 100, sigma 1 is 3, sigma 1 ka square will be 9, D1 ka square 25 plus N2 is 50, sigma 2 kitna tha? Sigma 2 was 2, 2 ka square is 4. So 4 plus D2 square is, D2 square means 100, 4 plus 100 divided by N1 plus N2. N1 is 100, N2 is 50. Now every time you have to first solve the bracket. So 9 plus 25. Always put the bracket properly. So this bracket is here. You put the bracket. 9 plus 25, 34. And 4 plus 100, 104. So 100 into 34 plus 50 into 104 divided by 150. Solve this first. 100 into 30. Every time multiplication is solved first. Bodmas rule. Remember that it was given to you in bridge course. 100 into 34 is 3400. plus 50 into 104 is 52,000 divided by 150. Okay. Then you add these two, you'll get 8,600 divided by 150. It is 57.33, and finally take the square root, 7.57. To take the square root by calculator, first press 57.33. Then there is a key in your calculator where square root symbol is written. Press that key, you will get the square root. So combined standard deviation is coming as 7.57. I have written kgs here. Why? Because this data was regarding the weight and it was expressed in kilograms. So my combined standard deviation will also be expressed in kilograms. So the combined standard deviation, that means the standard deviation of both the groups combined, boys and girls group, that combined standard deviation comes out to be 7.57 kilograms. Okay, so this is how we calculate the combined standard deviation. So one thing you have to be one should note that to calculate combined standard deviation, one has to calculate combined mean. Okay, combined mean निकालना ही पड़ेगा, फिर ही आप combined standard deviation निकाल सकते हैं. That is why this problem becomes slightly lengthier one. Okay, so combined mean पहले ही निकालना पड़ेगा, because unless you find out combined mean, you will not be able to find out the differences. Na? D means difference. So D1 means difference of the mean of the first group from the combined mean. D2 means difference of the mean of the second group, that is x2 bar, from the combined. Then put everything in the formula, simplify it, and get the answer. While for simplifying, be careful. Brackets बराबर लिखो. यहाँ पर कुछ students यहाँ bracket नहीं लगाएंगे तो everything will, the calculation will be wrong. Okay, so put the brackets. First brackets are solved. When you solve this bracket, then only you open it. Okay, 100 into 30. And always multiplication has to be done first. So 100 into 34 will be done first, then 50 into 104, then you add, divide, and then take the square. Okay, so I hope you have understood. So today we have seen coefficient of variation, its uses or applications in determining which group has got more variation and which group is more consistent. And then finally, we have seen how to find out the combined standard deviation. Okay, so this completes the chapter of measures of dispersion. So we have completed the unit 3. Okay. Here I have given you the tutorial questions. So you solve these questions. In case you get any difficulty, we are going to discuss in the tutorial class. So these are the tutorial problems. I have tried to give you different types of problems. So solve them. Thank you so much.